Hello everyone, how's it going today? I am excited because this video means a lot to me. It's the top 10 books of 2020. These are the 10 books that I thought were outstanding this year or that really held my attention and I couldn't put them down, or they've stuck in my mind ever since I read them, even from the beginning of the year. And I wanted to let you guys know about them and tell you why I like them so much. Now, I'm going to try not to spoil them, but sometimes I struggle with that, so I'll try not to. I'll start from the bottom of the list and then work my way up to my number one. So this is in order. My number 10 favorite book of the year was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I do not own a physical copy of this yet. I listened to the audiobook, but I will be getting it soon. The average rating on Goodreads for this book is a 4.12. So that's a pretty high rating for this book. It is my number 10 on the list. It is a fantasy YA novel about a young girl who has a twin sister and then another older sister, and something tragic happens to them in their life when they're very young, and they are transported into the world of fairy. So that means that there's magical creatures, there's kings and hierarchies and all kinds of strange food and music, and it's just a gorgeous world. And I think that for it being a YA fantasy novel, I did see some issue, like I struggled with reading it. Like I always struggle with reading fantasy sometimes, but for it being YA, it was very good. It was very beautiful and wasn't too difficult for me to get into. I don't know how that would translate to physically reading it as opposed to audio listening, because I do absorb better fantasy through audio. So we'll see. I might try to do the second book physically if I can get a hold of it, and let you guys know what I think of that one as well. But it is a trilogy, and then there's like a short story about one character that came out after. So I am excited to start a new journey on that, and I really, really liked it. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. Most of the books on this list I probably gave 4 or 5 stars, so it was pretty good. Yeah, very impressed. Do recommend. The next book that I absolutely loved was The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This is a book of the month copy. I got it used on Mercari, but this is a book about a woman who she drops everything she's doing in her life. She goes on this investigative journey to find out what happened to her aunt, because her aunt years ago just mysteriously disappeared and no one's found her body. No one's really investigating it like she thinks they should. So she just goes on and does it herself. It's a horror, definitely, and a thriller and mystery, I think. I would probably more so categorize this as mystery horror, but it's about a hotel that she ends up going to because that's where her aunt worked. Lots of spooky supernatural things start happening, and you're trying to figure out if there's ghosts or if it's actual people committing these crimes. And it was just a fun ride. There's a lot of trigger warnings. Horror tends to do that, so just please, look out for yourself and your mental well-being. So if you have those, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but look them up for yourself, please, because, it can get pretty bad. I remember some sexual things happening in this. And it's just a beautiful cover, first of all. I love this cover. And second of all, it just really grabbed me. I listened to the audiobook of it and I just really, really enjoyed it. I think this did come out in 2020, actually. So that's pretty great. The average rating on Goodreads is 4.05 stars, so that's still pretty high. I'm pretty surprised by how high some of the books on my list are. I guess I agree with the masses on certain things. I do recommend this if you love a good horror story or a good mystery to solve. So do love that one. Number 8 on this list is one that I honestly did not expect. I had heard so many good things and yet so many opposing opinions of this book from the time I started doing BookTube and looking into it. And it is an older book, okay? Hear me out. This book came out a few years ago. What year did this come out? 2015. So this was, a few years ago on BookTube. But it took a lot of people by storm, and it has very good ratings, but also now that so many people have read it, it's kind of evened out. It has a 3.93, so almost a 4 on Goodreads. And it is The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I don't know how I feel about this author because I did DNF a book by her also this year. So, I don't think it's necessarily that I'm in love with the author. I think I just really resonated with this particular book. It's a thriller, an adult thriller, and it's about a woman who has a very bad alcohol problem So if you're sensitive to relapsing and alcoholism, maybe steer clear of this one, or at least research it very well and see what happens, because she's struggling with that, and so people don't believe her. It's kind of that trope, but I feel like it was the beginning of that trope, so it's not as worn out when this came out. And I have yet to read a lot of books with that trope. It's not my favorite because it is, I guess, marketing on sickness, but it is just a book and it's just a story, so I'm not going to hold that against someone like Paula Hawkins for writing a book about it. It's very, very well written. It is very good. I think that the order of events that happen in this book was a good decision and well done, well executed. I was thoroughly engulfed in this story the whole time I was listening to it on audio, and I just didn't expect to like it because everyone was so divided, and I thought I would be on the bad side. So I was very surprised by this book. It really surprised me, and I kind of feel basic for liking it, but at the same time it's like, if you like a book, you like a book. Who cares? I just really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the little twists and the turns. And even if you don't agree with some of the things that the author chose to do in this book, I still think that we can appreciate that it is a well-written book and that it is a good book. Everybody has their opinion, but that's mine. My number 7 favorite book of 2020 is, no surprise, it is Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. Rory Power has done no wrong to me so far in her 2 books. She's writing a 3rd one right now that I'm very excited to pick up once it comes out. But this is a YA novel, horror, I think is what she called it. It is rated at 3.65 on Goodreads, so it's a little bit lower than the other one so far. I still think it's very good. I liked Wilder Girls a little bit more. I can't lie and say that. I still really enjoyed this. Couldn't put it down. I literally read this in like 2 days, and I probably could have read it in a day if I'd really wanted to, but I wanted to space it out and enjoy it and thoroughly ingest all of the goodness and not just devour it and swallow it whole, if that makes any sense. I'm sure you guys have done that to a book before if you've really enjoyed it. But this book, I got the autographed edition at Books A Million because I went to a Books A Million that was shutting down, so there's a signature there, so that's lovely. And I had just been following her Instagram. I still follow her Instagram, and she posts about the book she's writing and her process and life and everything. And I just really, really enjoy this author. And I think that she writes some lovely, interesting, different stories, especially for YA. But this particular story is about a girl who lives with her mother in kind of like a rundown, ramshackle, like downright neglect situation, and she doesn't understand why or anything. And she finds out she has family. She contacts the family. She goes to visit the family without her mother's permission, and it's like a big deal. Like, her mother is like very weird and superstitious about certain things, and like fire has to always be around or something weird like that. And so she goes on her own to this town where her mother grew up, and she finds out that her mom had a sister, and there's just a lot of drama and a lot of mysteries to solve and secrets to uncover, and it's just really weird stuff going on, and you don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Like, is the mom the bad guy? Is the mom trying to save her, or is the mom just abusive? Or is the aunt or grandmother, I think it's the grandmother, abusive, or she's trying to help her? Like, you don't know until like the very end of the novel, and then it's really weird. It gets weird, guys. Like, if you like weird books with weird endings, this is kind of sciencey, and you do have to suspend a little disbelief in this. But it's fun. It is very over the top, off the wall crazy at the end, and I loved it. I thought that it was very fun, and I like our characters here. It's sapphic. It's not clear as to specifically details about that, but it is sapphic. So I do really, really recommend this if you are interested in anything that I said, because it was very good. The next book I'm going to recommend to you guys that is in my top 2020 books is In the Dream House by Carmen Marie Machado. This is a book I don't physically own yet, but I will be getting a copy of it soon. It is a autobiography. Oddly enough, I don't read a ton of nonfiction here, and I want to start reading more and like annotating those, because I think that would be something that I could learn from, especially, books about feminism and Black culture and Black Lives Matter types of books. I think those would be very, very important for me to read. But for now, I've only read a couple, and one of them was this book, and it was so good, you guys. Like, I don't think I like autobiographies, but this was so well written. It felt like a poetry book or a song. I felt like I was listening to a song, and I think it was narrated by the author in the book that I listened to on Libby. but I've got to get a copy of this and reread it because it was so dark and so sad and so beautiful and lovely and devastating, and I just can't stop thinking about this book and how beautifully it was written. If you love poetry or songs or any kind of lyrical writing, I recommend this. And if you like autobiographies, I recommend this. And it was a story about her life and an abusive relationship with another woman. It was very eye-opening for me personally. It's not that I never thought that abuse didn't happen in those kind of relationships, because that is a stereotype. Like, either you deserve it because you are gay or it doesn't happen, and that's just not true at all. And I think that it's very eye-opening in those kinds of things, but also in the history of abuse with women or men relationships. And I just think that it's something that a lot of people should check out. And she did a lot of research to find out history of things like this, and it's a very sad story. So if you think you can handle those types of tough subjects, because it does have a lot of trigger warnings and a lot of sexual content and a lot of abuse and a lot of hate and cursing and stuff like that, I do recommend it if you can handle those, because it is a gorgeous book. Amazingly awful, horrible, gorgeous book. And it's rated 4.52 on Goodreads, so it's almost a 5. If you can believe that, that's very high. So it's loved by everybody. So please check this out. I cannot stress that enough. My number 5 book of most impressive, amazing books of 2020 would be My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is a book, I think it was the first book I read this year, if you guys can remember way back then. This is my art copy. I need to get a final copy because I would prefer a nice hardcover, I think. But this is a 2020 release and I love it. It's a dark contemporary. It's about a young girl who, I think she's like 15, and she goes to this specialty school, and she has a passion for like literature and writing and reading and stuff. And her professor takes advantage of that, and he's older, like in his 40s, and he manipulates her mind and tricks her and like makes her think that they're in love and in a relationship, like a consensual adult relationship, when they are indeed not, because she is a minor and it is not legal and it is not consensual. It is not okay. So when I say relationship, I don't mean like okay relationship. I mean, that's just what they called it in this book. So this is about a relationship between a minor and adult, and the abuse that happens in that, and the disgusting things that he convinces her to believe about herself, and the abusive manipulation that goes on in her mind towards him and from him, and how she does somersaults in her mind like a lot of victims try to do sometimes, saying that it's okay, that they wanted it, and it's just not okay. And this had some really, really tough subjects and tough conversations within it. And I think that a lot of people were grossed out by that, and a lot of people did not like what this book was trying to push forward to get that story out. Like, there's a lot of bad stuff to read in here to get to the point of the book. And I loved it. I loved the entire thing, and it made me really want to read Lolita. And I know that that's gross because that book is about a relationship between an adult and a child, but the author talks about how she had to research that book, and I think she even did some like really deep writing on that in her college courses. And I really think that I want to read that book as well, just to understand what she's talking about in this book, because they reference that book a lot. The teacher even gives the book to the girl as like a, see, it's okay that we're doing this, and it's just gross. There's some really bad trigger warnings in this. If you are sensitive to sexualization of, like if you have had issues in the past with things like that, please do not read this. I don't know if this is good for victims or not. I cannot tell you. I do not know. So please look out for number 1 yourself when you're reading this. And also there's like suicide and murder and death mentions and stuff in this. So, just keep an eye out for yourself and research if you're interested in this book, because it's so good. Like, I want to reread it again because I was just so astounded at the writing style. I think this was her first book, and I definitely was not expecting to like this in the way that I did. I had been hearing good things about it, and I happened to get a copy from like a Goodreads review, a Goodreads giveaway, like very early on in this book's career. So I got very lucky that I got to read this very early. And I do have a full-length review if you want to check that out. I'll try to link it in the cards maybe if I think about it. It's just so good. Like, beautifully, awfully good. It's just a tragic, gorgeously awful story. Highly recommend it though. Great, great book. The next book I read in 2020 that I absolutely loved also did not come out in 2020, and that is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Ooh, marine light. This book, I think it came out in like 2012 or something. Like, this is a little bit older, but I absolutely loved it. I randomly found this at like a thrift store, and I was like, you know, I've heard a lot of things about this book. It's cheap here, so I'll just try it. And I loved it. It was absolutely great. I felt a lot of weird connections to our main girl here because she overanalyzes everything in case something happens. And then she makes like crazy twisted, like dark, awful plans to deal with those things. Like, I don't go that far, of course. Like, I'm not that person, but I do overanalyze everything and think about all of the possibilities that could ever happen ever. So I identified with her in that aspect. Don't think I'm weird, please. I'm not crazy. But I've been hearing a lot of bad things about this book lately, but I absolutely loved it. It really sparked a new interest in thrillers for me, which I already had an interest in them. But this book is very well done. I think the writing is fantastic. The order of sequence of events was very well done, and that it just had me waiting for the next chapter. Like, I could not stop. Like, I did not want to put this book down. I had to, but I did not want to. And it just kept me going and going and going. And then it would twist things around, and it just pulled me all over the place. Like, I could not predict where this book was going. And the ending was not the 100% best, but I loved it. So, you know, I'm just going to push this book in your face again, even though you've probably seen it a million times, but I really loved it. And it is my number 4 book of 2020. So, you know, I really liked it. My number 3 book of 2020 is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I don't read a ton of Stephen King as of right now because I struggle reading him physically, at least at the moment. I'm trying to get better by reading like short story collections. This is a copy I won in a giveaway by Donnie Goodman, I think's his name. I'm bad at names, y'all. I'm sorry. But I will link his channel in the description. He just started a channel. It's The Horror Hypothesis. If you've never heard of this channel, he does horror content. Like, that's like all he does. He talks about movies and news and games and books and all kinds of wonderful horror things and manga. I won a giveaway on Instagram like a couple years ago or a year ago, and this was in that bundle, and I read it, and it's so good. Pet Sematary is probably a top contender for my favorite Stephen King. It and Pet Sematary, but I haven't read a ton, so I can't say for sure yet. But it's so good, y'all. Like, I can't decide which is my favorite now because it was so well written. It's so good. Of course, there are old languages used in this, so if you're sensitive to, like, you know, certain slurs, stay away from this because it's definitely full of them. Stephen King's writing is just, that's just how he writes. And I'm not saying it's okay, even if it is old. It's still not okay to write about, but it is how it is. And I still really enjoyed the writing. Horror is full of those kinds of things. So you just have to get used to it whenever you're reading horror. It doesn't mean it's okay to say, but a lot of bad characters say those words. So I feel like it is something that they would do. This is a story about a pet cemetery. It's spelled wrong, you can tell. About a pet cemetery where you bury an animal and it comes back to life. And then some spooky things happen and people may be burying people and then zombies, and it's just scary. I recommend it if you like horror or if you like Stephen King. All right, guys, we're down to the last 2. The second book, number 2, my 2020, which honestly, this was a hard toss-up between 1 and 2. Like, I had such a hard time deciding who my number 1 and my number 2 books of the year were. But this book, oh my gosh, y'all, I cannot stop thinking about this book. Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. This is stunning. This is gorgeous writing, gorgeous atmosphere, gorgeous characters, gorgeous story, extremely beautiful and sad and wonderful and magical. It's like everything I didn't know that I needed inside of one book. And it's a short book. It's not even that long. I waited to get this book because I was trying to find a good deal on it because I didn't have the money at the time. I think I got this for like $6 on Amazon, like full price. Like, that was it. And I can't get over how much I love it. It's a story about these 2 sisters, and one of them goes through something very tragic that's very triggering, and I did make a full vlog review on this. If you want to check it out, I'll try to link it either in the cards or in the description. They kind of go through it together because of what happened, and you're trying to figure out what that thing is throughout the whole book. And there's also this bird that comes every year that is magical, and it doesn't show up, so they're trying to figure out what's going on. And every woman in this family of them, like their mother and their grandmother and all them, they all have magical powers, like just the women. So they're like witches, I guess. It was just beautiful. Like, it was so impossibly hard for me to put this book down. It was so good. Love it. And now for the final book on this list. It is the number 1 book of 2020 for me. Personally, my cat's now in the living room chewing on our Christmas tree. We have yet to put it up. It's just moved out of the way. For this, I kind of cheated. Okay, this is my list. I can cheat if I want to. I did the trilogy of The Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. And I just love this trilogy so much. It's 3 books. This is the third, this is the second, and then this is the first. I couldn't pick between them, but they were all fantastic. I think they were all 5 stars for me. And I love the series. It was so good. It's a YA fantasy, very Japanese inspired series. And it's about a girl who is a half fox, half human. And she travels with a group of friends, very similar to a lot of anime that I've watched. It reminds me of Inuyasha mixed with like Dragon Ball Z kind of story, because they have to collect these scrolls to get a wish from this dragon and to prevent someone else from taking that wish and doing bad things with it. You follow this group of friends and a lot of tragic things happen to them. And then there's some love. There's even some LGBTQ elements to this that I did not expect, that I was very happy with. And I just can't recommend it enough to you guys because, sorry, it's just so good. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It was so good. And I can't stop thinking about this series and how much it meant to me. And I want to reread it someday. And I'm trying to get JB to read it too eventually. I think he might enjoy it as well. That's my number 1 of the year. Thank you guys. I hope that you had a wonderful 2020, even though it's been a rough year for everyone. Some have had it rougher than others, and I'm very grateful for what I do have and the people that I have gotten to keep in my life. If you've watched any of my vlogs recently, you know that a lot of people in my family got COVID, and it was very touch and go for a few days there. And luckily everyone's recovered as of right now, and no one else has it. So we're hoping that it stays in the good and that there aren't too many, lasting effects or anything. But for right now, I'm very thankful for everything that's happened and how lucky we got, because some people are pretty old, and it can be pretty rough. But I do hope you guys are safe and taking care of yourself and your family and wearing your masks, because this is serious. This isn't a game. This isn't about politics. This is a health issue. And no matter what part of life you come from, this is something that we should just do for each other and take care of each other as a species. So I just hope that you think about it that way and, care about people. I love you guys, and I want you to live. Like, it's as simple as that, as I want everyone to live as long as they are supposed to, not have to be alone from their families when they're dying. Anyways, enough of that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you've read any of these books and you love them, let me know. Or if you hated them, tell me why. And let me know what your number 1 book was this year. I'm very interested in knowing what everyone was reading and what they loved. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll see ya.